This is Vanessa Gorman. We're going to go through Greek verb tenses in English today and make sure you understand all the different possible tenses in the Greek language. Remember, finite verbs are verbs that are conjugated, and their analysis includes 5 pieces of information in addition to the lemma, what the verb is derived from. Person, first, second, and third. Number, singular, plural, or dual. Tense. Now we have a lot of choices in Greek. Present, imperfect, aorist, perfect, future perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect. So these are the tenses that we're going to go through today. We already know what the third person singular and plural is in the imperfect and aorist. That's all the verbs we've seen thus far. Now we're going to start looking at the different possibilities for verbs. Now we're going to stay with the indicative mood for the time being. We're going to move to voice next, but for now what we're going to look at are these tenses and what they mean and which ones are worth learning. Obviously, you know that aorist and imperfect are very common in the third person, and you've already dealt with them quite a lot. Now, tenses do not just denote time. They also denote something called aspect. So aspect means, is it something that is one time and done? So I walked to the store. It happened once. I'm done with it. Is it a continuous action in the sense of I am walking to the store. I'm in the process. I haven't finished it yet. Or something completed which has continuous relevance, which is to say something like, I've always felt that it's wrong to steal from your friends. That's a pretty simple one. It's a feeling I've had in the past, but it's continuing to be relevant, or it's something I've done in the past that continues to be relevant. So time is obvious. It's either going on right now, it's going on in past time, or it's going on in future time. But then we have it mixed up with these aspects, and that's why we have so many tenses in Greek. English does it with a lot of modals or helping verbs. Greek does it by actually having different tenses. So the aorist tense, remember, is simply past time completed action. One and done. He sailed into Ephesus, the great king wept. Imperfect is past time, but incomplete or continuous or habitual, right? The army was marching. They haven't finished, even though it's in the past time. Every spring, the army marched against Caria. It's a repeated action, so we would put it in the imperfect. Frankly, sometimes ancient authors don't worry too much about distinguishing their imperfects from their aorists. A lot of imperfects can be translated with a sense of the aorist, but it's still got that implication there. There's another past tense called the perfect tense, which is past time, but this is one that has completed action with permanent result. And this is what's usually translated as have or has. So Alcibiades has betrayed Athens time and time again. He's done it. It continues. He has betrayed Athens. Athens is in a state of being betrayed. It's not just finished. He asked the Athenians to remain inside the walls. He has asked them. And it's not that he does it just once. It has this sense of continuing on. He has done it in the past, and the effect continues into the present. Generally speaking, if you see the word perfect, translated have or has, and you're golden. All right? It's far less common than the imperfect or the aorist. I'll tell you that right now. The present tense is fairly common, as you might expect, and this is your simple present time, continuous or ongoing action, and it comes in various forms. We'll talk about the simple present, which is simply the army marches, as opposed to what they call the progressive present. The army is marching. The march is in progress. The emphatic present, the army does march. And you can use what's called the gnomic present, or the present of a general truth, right? Truth is a virtue. Patience is a virtue. If you're trying to say something as like an adage, you can say it in the present tense. as something that's generally accepted. And of course, there's the far overused historical present, overused in English at least. The army marches into Caria and fights a great battle, talking about the past tense. It's a sloppy way of writing. It's usually pretty obviously the past. I do not recommend it in English, even though newscasters do it all the time. Put past events in past tense when you're writing in English. But there will be times when you see the historical present in Greek. Present is usually no problem to translate, right? We have a good sense of it. The particular nuance of whether it's progressive or emphatic, you figure out from context or from particles. The future tense is just that. It's the future. There is no aspect to it. It's just something that will happen. And so it's usually translated will. Some people use shall, but that's pretty much obsolete. Pericles will lead out the army tomorrow. Now, it can't have aspect because it hasn't happened yet. And there's always this sense of this is his intention. Now an earthquake could happen so that he doesn't actually do this, but at the moment, the plan is that Pericles will lead the army out tomorrow. So often the future has this sense of purpose or intention, especially when we get into subordinate clauses in the next few chapters. It's also fairly uncommon, frankly. You would think it'd be pretty common, but it really isn't. So it's not one to worry about, and it's not one that's hard to translate. Again, the present is easy to translate. The perfect is easy to translate. The future is easy to translate. Pluperfect is something prior to something else in the past. So if you're talking about something yesterday in reference to something that the day before that, sound a little confusing? Well, it's really not that bad because all you do is translate it with the word had and you're set. Pericles had been sleeping before the noise woke him up. So the noise woke him up is a simple aorist. It's something completed action in the past tense, but Pericles was sleeping even before that action took place. So he had been sleeping. He had intended to rescue the hostage, but they were freed before he arrived. So it's not hard. Pluperfect, had. That's what you have to have in your head. How to translate the pluperfect? Had. If you've got that, you'll see the morphology pluperfect and you'll know how to translate it. And frankly, it is very, very rare. Likewise, there is something called the future perfect, which, as you might guess, is translated like the future will and the perfect have, will have. And again, this is something in the future with an ongoing effect, and it's expected to happen before sometime else in the future. So what does that mean? Will have. Alcibiades will have fled by now. He will have died in vain, right? This is a potentiality of the future. But it's an action that's going to be completed. It is so rare that it is not worth learning. You will see these very, very rarely in a lifetime. And when you do, you say future equals will, perfect equals have, translate it will have. It's very, very simple. So most of these tenses are pretty simple to translate. Pericles is making a speech. He made a speech. He will make a speech. He was making a speech. Perfect, he has made a speech. He had made a speech is pluperfect, and he will have made a speech is the future perfect. So the translation into English of these are not difficult. The fact of the matter is, aorist and imperfect are far and away the most common. Present is the next. After that, it's probably a tie between future and perfect, although perfect may win out, I'm not sure. And pluperfect and future perfect are very rare. So, as a summary, aspect. Aspect is complete or incomplete. So the present could be incomplete, ongoing, habitual, or aorist is completed action in the past. Perfect gives you completed action whose effects are still relevant. And by that I mean perfect, pluperfect, and future perfect. They're all coming from the same thing. So that's the summary of the different tenses we use in Greek.